I'm Lynn Prowse-Bishop, and this is the Virtual Business Show. I'm continuing the Offshore Freelancer series with this episode, focused on helping clients to understand the differences between local and offshore and highlight some of the things that you might not have thought about when choosing the offshore option. The VA industry is global, and that means that it's far easier now for clients to shop around. Globalisation, which was pushed on us by the UN, and whether you like it or not, has made it easier for us to connect with and work with people from all over the world. As countries in the East become more connected to the internet, as technology advances, as companies in the West catch on to opportunities in the East, these sorts of shifts in who gets the work done are going to happen. There is no escaping it. And I think this is good, but you have to be careful and know what you are getting. Don't just believe what you see online. I've seen one offshore company giving a history of the industry that was completely incorrect. For an accurate history of the VA industry, see my blog, and I'll include a link on the show page as well. Working virtually or remotely carries inherent risks for both parties. Primary amongst them is, how do you know you're getting what you pay for? How do you know the freelancer has the qualifications or credentials they say? Can you check? And are the credentials the same in Bangalore as they are in New York? With in-country support, you can at least check the accuracy of what the VA is telling you. You can phone up local testimonial givers. You're usually aware of what the education standards are in the country you operate. Additionally, we know that degrees aren't valued the same country by country. I've seen some freelance organisations claiming their VAs are degreed. But what does that mean exactly? This is why we have degree-qualified engineers from Russia working in Australia as cleaners, and teachers and nurses whose degrees aren't recognised here. And if someone has a degree, why on earth would you think paying them $5 an hour is fair? I've seen VAs here who say they have degrees, but can't follow the simplest instructions. There are additional risks for partnering with someone offshore. Aside from differences in training or qualifications, what about cultural misinterpretations, language barrier, understanding of local and legal requirements and ways of doing business, local weather events that might take the freelancer out of action for a few days to weeks or months, time differences, ethics. What's ethical in one country may not be in another. With regard to time differences, I spoke with one business owner in the UK who was using a freelancer in Asia. When that person had questions, the time difference meant the client wasn't getting to the query until the next day, would answer it, and then the freelancer got the answer when they woke up. They would then ask another question while the client was sleeping, which wasn't actioned until the next day when they woke up, and so on. And so the project, which would have taken a day with a local VA, took 3 to 4 utilising the offshore option. With regard to differing ethics, let me give you an example. I had a Filipino freelancer use an article that I had written that talked about the benefits of using a VA. They used this article as a page on a site that they had built for a client of theirs. Everywhere I had used the word VA, they had changed it to the client's company name, plagiarising the article and passing it off as their content written for the client, who had no doubt paid them, thinking that they'd come up with the content themselves. I contacted them and asked them to byline me. Didn't have a problem with them using the article, just say where you got it from. He responded with, "You sound like my wife. What are you going to do? Bait me with a stick?" So basically saying I couldn't do anything about it. But I could, and I managed to get his page taken down as a breach of copyright. Actually, the data protection agency I went through pulled the entire site. But this shows the ethics of some of the people offering offshoring support. And what about the client who supposedly owned the site? They'd potentially lost the money that they'd already paid this freelancer, may well have had to find someone else, and the project would have had to have been started from scratch. Another example of poor ethics was given by another Australian VA who discovered her entire site had been copied using a free software called HT Track Website Copier. After some investigation, she discovered that a lady in the US was setting up people to work from home as VAs, including giving them a site. She hired a freelancer in India to do that site work. That person used the software and copied the Australian VA site and passed it off as a template. When she approached him about it, he threatened to sue her for costing him money. He shrugged her concerns off and said he was making changes, so what did it really matter to her anyway? Now, of course, this isn't to say all offshore freelancers are like these two, but if this is the sort of unprofessionalism with which some offshore freelancers treat these kinds of issues, do you really want to put your confidential info and intellectual property into their hands? What are they going to do with it? Will it be used for their next client? It immediately speaks to their trustworthiness, and trust is one of the most important things we have in a virtual relationship. How do you trust them? Whatever they write on their site isn't necessarily accurate. It could belong to somebody else, so you can't rely on what you're reading there. Add to that, for example, the Chinese government's reputation for turning a blind eye to intellectual property theft, something which continues to keep them out of the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership Agreement, and there's a risky pattern of behaviour emerging. Additionally, China has a reputation for overselling capacity and skills in business dealings. It's part of their business culture. Lawyers here advise if you're going to be dealing with China, claims made by potential business partners should never be taken at face value. One company here in Australia who has done business with Chinese businesses before said one of the main problems with doing business in China is that the two countries don't think the same way. They also have a tendency to say yes to everything, even when they really mean no. Due diligence is hard enough, but much more difficult when you're using an offshore freelancer. Obviously, you have the same sorts of issues with locally based people, but you can more easily check their credentials and get testimonials from people in country. Here's a bit more on ethics. Recently, we saw on Facebook an ad from a credit repair business seeking a $6 per hour maximum VA to work full time for them as an independent contractor. The candidate's English needed to be impeccable, because they would be impersonating their clients when contacting the US and Canadian credit bureaus, credit agencies, and creditors for each individual. So that means that people are turning over their private financial information, including answers to their security questions, to that credit repair organisation, and then they are outsourcing it to another country so that people can dig further into their credit history, all the while pretending to be the person being discussed. I couldn't find out more about where the credit repair company was located because Facebook pulled the post as fraud, as you would expect. If something should go wrong, how difficult might it be to seek legal redress? Most of the time we're met with these types of responses because the freelancer knows there is little you can do when you're talking about international copyright and actions need to be taken across borders. It's very difficult and very expensive, to the point of not being worth it, especially for SMEs. In 2016, we saw the implementation of the General Data Protection Regulation, which is designed to protect your personal data and information, but very rarely, if ever, do we see offshore freelancers having any sort of compliance statement on their sites. With many business bloggers and journalists promoting the advantages of offshoring to cheap labour countries, it's important you understand what a virtual assistant really is. So here's a working definition. A VA is a business owner, a highly skilled, independent professional entrepreneur who provides remote, administrative, technical and/or creative business support services to clients locally, nationally or globally. So here's a few things to note. A business owner. Many of these freelancers offshore aren't business owners. They're either working for an employer who is pimping them out for next to nothing, or they're just after the quick one-off job. Entrepreneur. A VA is an entrepreneur, which is further defined as someone who is accountable for the inherent risks and outcomes of an enterprise, and it's become used to describe business owners more generally. If you're looking for a VA, then be sure that's what you're getting. An employee of an outsourcing company is not a VA. A freelancer who answers your job on Upwork is not a VA. Now, there are emerging entrepreneur VAs in these countries who do understand this definition and are likewise trying to improve the perception of their industry both in-country and overseas. And I know people here in Australia who have partnered with those solopreneur VAs and have had a great relationship with them. You need to be sure you are getting what you think you are getting. One of the things many of these business bloggers and journalists say is when using an offshore VA, it's important you keep tabs on the work, keep on top of what they're doing, set aside time to check in on them regularly, basically that you micromanage them. One even suggested changing passwords every second day so that the freelancer had to contact you for it. If you're checking on work being done and having the assistant report to you regularly, then they are not accountable for inherent risks and outcomes of your enterprise. They are therefore, by definition, your employees, not entrepreneurs, which therefore means they're not VAs. It also means that one of the crucial criteria necessary for successfully working together virtually, trust, is missing from your relationship. Local professional VAs are running their own businesses as contractors. They are not and never should be confused with your employees. They set their rates and hours of work, having consideration of your commercial requirements, and they have a vested interest in your business succeeding. You should never need to micromanage them, which provides an immediate cost saving to you of using local over offshore because you aren't wasting your time looking over the shoulder of your support. Let's say you charge out your services at $300 an hour and you set aside 2 hours a week to check on your VA, making sure the work is being done and so on. That's a cost of $600 a week directly off your bottom line, nowhere near offset by spending only $5 an hour on them. Something else to think about is that many of the offshore freelancers, especially the ones coming from bidding sites like Upwork, are after the quick job and the reference. For the most part, they're not interested in building a long-term mutually beneficial relationship with your business. I had a client who sent his website to an Indian company after he initially approached me, and at the time I was new to WordPress and I wasn't comfortable taking responsibility for it. He sent the project to an Indian company that was recommended to him. It was basically a squeeze page, not really a full site, but the issue was that whenever anything needed to be changed, or if he wanted something tweaked, added, updated, he could never get in touch with the people who originally did the site for him. So the job was done, and there was no after-sales service, something that professional VAs will always provide. Professional VAs will also provide guarantees, and you will always be able to get in touch with them. They're not just after the quick buck and then on to the next client, as they have a vested interest in the success of your business and want to nurture a relationship with you and your business. When you're only charging $5 or so an hour, your business model relies on volume to enable you to make money. So it becomes about getting the job done quickly so you can move on to the next job and the next and the next and so on. I spoke to another business owner who outsourced to an offshore freelancer some graphic design work. He got, for example, I think it was 20 posters for $50 rather than the $50 plus per poster he might have been charged here. Fair enough. He's a small business trying to save some money. But he found that when he went back to the freelancer to request changes or tweaks to the design, they came back with far in excess of the original quoted price. Other offshore freelancers will do the initial job for you and then charge much more for ongoing support. They won't hand over site login information, or they require you to have all your changes managed by them. Or, as I mentioned in the ethics points above, your site may in fact be one copied from someone else's site, and when it's found out, you end up losing your site altogether and have to start from scratch. Sometimes the freelancer you encounter isn't a solopreneur freelancer at all, but an employee of a larger organisation, often owned by Western business people who are employing cheap offshore labour to do your work. These organisations will have a charge-out rate, and their employees will often be earning far less than this. Given the rates are so low, they also operate on a volume model. With such low profit margins, they need stacks of work. And so you become one client in a stable of many, and you aren't really receiving individual, undivided attention. A big difference from partnering with a professional local VA. Some will claim to be Australian-based, when in actual fact they have a registered business name and address here, but are located offshore using offshore staff. So don't think just because they provide you with an Australian number or address they are actually located here. We've all experienced the likes of Telstra, Optus and banks who offshore their call centres, and you'll have Gavin with a heavy Indian accent telling you he's on the Gold Coast. There was another business advertising as Australian who actually was located in the Philippines, but that didn't stop him advertising himself as local. Pretty deceptive, especially when you think you're actually shopping local. The fact is, if the freelancer is providing services at a rate of $2 to $10 an hour, chances are they are not located in Australia, regardless of the address or contact details they give you. Conversely, the organisation you approach will promote itself as being in the country their employees live in, so the Philippines or India, for example, because they know that some clients want to feel like they're doing something positive for the people in emerging economies. Well, let me tell you, if you want to do something positive for people in emerging economies, if you hire one of these offshore freelancers, then maybe what you can do is actually pay them what they're worth, what value they bring to your business, or maybe even filter some of the percentage of the profit that they're making for you back into their economy. That's one way to really do something positive for them. I want to share with you an ad on YouTube for an outsourcing company. Obviously, I can't share it in the podcast, so I will include the link on the episode page. But in summary, the video is a recruitment ad for an outsourcing company, which a bit of research turned up is actually a Canadian registered company who employs staff in the Philippines. But their actual company website makes no mention at all that the owners are Canadian. The whole impression is you are dealing with a Philippines-based company. The video talks about the advantages of employment with them. Large workspaces, good equipment, safe, clean and fun office, dual monitors, ample personal space to work in, 8-hour shifts. These are things taken for granted in the West as minimum working standards. Now, I don't presume to know what the standard working conditions are in the Philippines, India, or anywhere else, as I've never lived or worked in those countries, but then nor have many of you, I'm guessing. Is what we see here a step up from if they were working for a Filipino company, or if they were working for themselves? I've spoken with solopreneur Filipino VAs, and even they say $2 to $5 an hour is exploitative. This company also offers a month-long paid training session. A month training for what are promoted to you on the main company website as specialist VAs. Takes a month to become a specialist, apparently. They also get staff raffles, draws, giveaways, contests, and free beer. So now you have someone working on your account who is motivated by free beer. When you look deeper, these companies actually have set up fees nearing $1,000, their monthly fees, and there may be additional higher charges if you ask for work over and above the initial contract. So let's have a closer look at this company I've been talking about. In their case, your initial setup is $995. At today's recording, that's nearly 1,379 Australian. You then commit to 160 hours per month, which works out at roughly 40 hours a week, at costs ranging from $1,200 to $1,600 so about $1,663 to $2,217 Australian a month. That equates to about $10 to $13 per hour Australian. The thing is, chances are strong your invoice from your Australian or other locally based VA may be less than or similar to this. The site goes on to say that almost every other month, the number of work exceeds the 160 within your package. You're purchasing 160 hours per calendar month production time, and some months have more than 20 working days, resulting in over 160 hours of work product. You can choose to have your assistant cut off the support at 160 hours, or you purchase additional hours. The site doesn't say how much these are, but I'm assuming it's the same hourly rate based on your package, but in any event, they bank the hours in case the assistant takes leave. So now you're paying for leave. That's something you don't do with a local VA. Here's where it gets fun. You then have upgrade options. You can have a concierge who helps you manage your team member at a cost of $25 an hour. That's a bit of a jump. It's now costing you $32 to $35 an hour, not $7 to $10. So $44 to $49 Australian. If you need specialist software like Photoshop or Creative Suite, you pay an extra $50 to $130 a month, equating to $69 to $180 Australian. Your own open source software install can be done for a one-off fee of $75 or $103 Australian. MS Office at $45 a month. That's $63 Australian a month. I'm just going to pause here. So MS Office isn't standard software for these assistants, and now you're paying additional for it. Every local VA you approach will have Office as standard software included. Okay, back to the company. If you have a $1,200 per 160-hour person, overtime is billed at $15 US an hour. That's another big jump from the quoted $7 an hour. Additionally, the client is responsible for paying this VA's 13th month bonus, which we're told is a Philippine government mandate. And this bonus is due every December or upon termination of your contract. My head is spinning with the calculation they provide, but I'll include the link on the show page so that you can check it out. But honestly, be warned, the site loads incredibly slowly. You're also responsible for holidays. Special holidays at 130%, regular holidays at 200%, plus a $50 US one-time admin overhead fee. Are you getting the idea you're not really paying $7 an hour for these services yet? If you decide you love the person who's helping you, you can pay 3 months' worth of costs to have them work directly for your company. Sorry, this is something that your local VA will be doing for you regardless. So now we can see that using an outsourcing company for your needs is rife with hidden costs. You're paying in US dollars, and you are in the end paying far more than a local VA will charge you. And for software you should rightly expect the VA would have as standard. If you require specialist services like Photoshop, you would choose a VA who charges at the higher end of the range. So she might charge $60 to $80 an hour local. But you're not paying additional for the software. She brings that along with her. Additionally, a local VA will never charge you for holidays. You are not responsible for any on-costs like leave, workers' compensation, superannuation, taxes, etc., etc. The professional VA is a business owner. As such, they assume responsibility for these costs. When they quote you an hourly rate, that is all you pay. When they quote you a project rate or a package rate, that is what you pay. When they quote you a per audio minute transcription rate, that is all you pay. They also have the software your project needs, and they're responsible for keeping it updated. You will never be charged additional for software necessary to complete your projects. If after this you decide you still want to go offshore, just make sure you look into the support you are getting, whether the freelancer is an independent person or part of an outsourcing company. If you're after cheap, your option is the independent person, but don't presume that the service you will receive from that person will be the same necessarily as a local VA who wants to partner with you. Service quality and skill level may be different. Language barriers may cause difficulties. Different skills may mean you're spending more time fixing up work after you get it back than you would with a more skilled provider. Make sure you have all your ducks in a row and the processes in place to keep in touch throughout the contract and after, and systems available to help you manage them. Unfortunately, many of these Western-owned businesses have taken on board the term virtual assistant, even though their employees don't fit the definition, and business writers have taken it up and promote the offshore option as the best or only way to go. They are not your only way to go. But if you do go down this road, then do so with your eyes open. Understand that it may be difficult to check the credentials of offshore freelancers, or the freelancer specialist VA you get has actually only had a month of training. You may encounter cultural differences around ethics and confidentiality. There may be language issues. If English is their second language, there will be difficulties no matter what is said on websites. Depending on their location, there may be interruptions caused by weather such as typhoons, floods, and mudslides. If things go south, your legal rights could reduce to zero, as it becomes hard to prosecute across borders. Do the figures. If you're spending 2 hours a week micromanaging your offshore support, or spending X amount of time checking work when it comes back and knocking it into shape before you can send it out yourself, that's dead money. You've actually cost your business far more than is saved by spending $5 an hour. And if you think you're doing your offshore freelancer a favour, consider that you may in fact be paying a Western-based business employing cheap labour on your behalf and charging you a mozza in additional fees or fees for software you should rightly consider your support person would ordinarily have. If what you're after is a provider who solves your problem and provides a service that is of value to you, then pay that person, no matter where they are, accordingly. Not sweatshop rates simply because you want something done on the cheap, or you'll get exactly what you pay for. As veteran VA Sharon Williams says, if you decide to see a plastic surgeon, would you go to someone inexperienced, or do you spend a few extra dollars on someone who has skill, experience, and a guarantee they'll do a good job? I'm Lynn Prowse-Bishop. Thanks so much for listening.